this video, I'm going to talk about some of the costs that catch new expats or immigrants out when they first come to Spain. Some small, some not so small, but all of them things people either forget or don't know the budget for when they're planning their move. But before I get into these unexpected costs or charges, it's important to say that every country does things differently, and Spain does things differently. That was very diplomatic of me. And even with that, I'm going to talk about costs that you maybe weren't expecting, you didn't know about, etc. But you have to keep in mind that Spain is still one of the cheapest cost of livings in Western Europe. I think only second to Portugal. But if you don't know about these things before you move here, when you're budgeting, your first year, as mine did, it can feel a bit like financial death by 1,000 cuts. And trust me, even now, I still get the odd not very pleasant surprise that I had no idea about. So, hi guys, I'm Steve, welcome to the channel, welcome to Spain on a nice day. The past week has been cold, colder than I ever remember a November week, the end of November in Spain. And it's got a bit warmer today, it's still quite cloudy, but from tomorrow on, sunny days all week. So yes, I'm going to walk you through, and this is all in my opinion, my experience, but I'm going to walk you through the real unexpected costs or expenses that can catch us out when we're planning and moving and living here, so that you know things to budget for that you may not already know. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. So, number one, Spain is affordable, but there are costs that can come as a surprise. As I said, it's one of the cheapest countries, and it's not just the second cheapest country in Western Europe, it's also one of the cheapest countries in all of Europe to live. Housing is much cheaper than where I come from. Groceries are cheaper, eating out is cheaper, local taxes are cheaper, and once you're settled, your day-to-day life can be incredibly affordable. And by the way, when I say local taxes, I mean things like your council tax, your IBI, it's called here, your rubbish tax, and I don't mean income tax or property purchase tax when I say taxes or charges or costs. I mean the smaller things, the fees, the paperwork, the admin charges. And when you're new to Spain, you don't understand what's normal and what isn't, so they can come across as a shock. Number two, utilities, mostly cheap, but I still get stung. So you have to be careful. And I hear a lot of people saying stuff who haven't been here, asking me questions, who are worried about utility costs, worried about nasty surprises. But things like water, internet, electricity here tend to be reasonably priced, so they're unlikely to be a shock. But where things can go wrong or get confusing that you need to be careful of is with when you're setting up your electricity. And again, this is my experience, this is something happened to me, and hopefully you'll be able to avoid it. When you're setting up your first electricity account, you personally need to make sure you've agreed the price per kilowatt hour before anything's activated. And if your lawyer or gestor is setting up your electricity account for you, you need to make sure they have agreed what rate you're going to be paying before they sign you up. Now, I didn't know this. I had never seen this on video, but I automatically inherited the previous owner of my apartment's extremely high rate, and my first two bills were horrendous. By the time you get your first bill and realise it's a monstrous bill, your next month's already started. So even when you cancel it, you're still paying for that month. And I think that's how it works in Spain. So no matter what electricity supply you're going to, you need to double check and get an agree a rate, or have your gestor or accountant do it for you. And I suppose as a guide to you, the price I pay now for the electricity itself after discount is around 13 cents per kilowatt hour. So you should be looking for rates around that figure. So as long as you don't have that issue, for most people, the basic utility bills aren't where any of the real shocks are. It's things like that. And there are more. And by the way, if you're new to Spain, a gestor is basically an administrative specialist, the person who helps you deal with everyday paperwork, bureaucracy, and who most importantly is much easier to pay than a lawyer. Now, number 3, extra utility setup fees, and how I ended up again paying too much. When you're moved to Spain, just be aware that for a lot of things there are one-off setup charges that you may not be used to in your home country, like water, electricity and internet. But with the utility companies, they're not usually huge amounts, but they're still the kind of costs many newcomers, like me when I arrived, didn't know existed. But the biggest shock I had when getting my utilities arranged was using the wrong professional for the job. When I was buying my first property, my first home here in Spain, I went to the lawyer. I went to the lawyer that I was recommended to go to. And part of the initial conversations were about setting up your electricity and your water, etc. And they said, we can do that for you. And it was on their original quote. And it was €450 to do all that. Now, I didn't know any better. I can't really remember, but I think I assumed that's what most people do. But even without that, I knew it would be very hard for me to set up utilities, given that I don't speak Spanish. So I agreed to that and told them to go ahead and do it. But this was before I understood exactly what a gestor was and what they actually did for you, and how much more affordable they are for everyday stuff like this. So instead of paying a low gestor fee, I ended up being billed €450 for my lawyer just to put the utilities in my name. It sounds mad when I'm saying it now. So that's a big lesson here, and I know other people did exactly the same. So just to ensure I've got the message through to you, for things like utility setup, a gestor is the person you want to go to, not a lawyer. Now, I'm moving on, and this one section is mainly just for people who are planning on buying their property and not renting, but it's only a short section. So if you're going to be a renter, you can relax. This doesn't really apply to you. So it's number 4, taxes and the big property tax that not everyone knows about. And just before I get into this more sort of legal stuff, a quick note. I've said this in other videos and plenty of other videos, but I'm not an expert in any of this. I'm just someone who's been through it all. I've dealt with every one of these scenarios myself, so now I know better. So this is simply my experience of what new buyers need to be aware of. So first of all, when buying, there's a tax you need to be aware of that not everyone is aware of or knows to factor into their budget, and it's not small. It's a property purchase tax. If you're buying, and this is all I know about, if you're buying a used resale property, you'll pay a tax called the ITP when you're completing your purchase. And it's a percentage of the purchase price of your property. And in my case, I paid 10%. So if you're buying an apartment at 80,000, you're going to pay an extra 8,000 in property tax, and that money's gone. And all the regions are different in Spain for everything. So the percentage for property tax is set by the region you're in, and it varies very significantly across Spain. So always check the current rate for the specific region that you're moving to. I'm in the Valencia community, and for me it was 10%. And I know it's a huge cost, and if you're not prepared for it, it can be a huge shock. And it could also mean to a lot of people they're maybe looking at properties that are more than they actually can afford. Need to look at a cheaper property because they have the property tax to pay. But keep in mind, even with this tax included in your total costs, property prices here in Spain are still well below most of Western Europe. And that's one of the reasons why, along with the sun, why most people move here. Then, once you own your property, there are the annual local taxes that I've already talked about, some of them. which are sort of much easier to miss because they don't arrive monthly, they're annual. So for a little bit more detail, there's the IBI, your council tax, and the basura. I'm not great at pronouncing Spanish. It's BASURA, which is your local rubbish collection. And in my area, they're collected through an agency called SUMA, which manages taxes for Valencia and Alicante. They arrive at the same time every year, and when you're not expecting them, it can feel like a lot of stuff hitting you at the same time. Well, it does feel exactly like that. But these taxes are much lower than, for example, council taxes in the UK, and as far as I know, in Western Europe. So if you're thinking of buying, make sure you understand the property purchase tax on day one, the annual taxes that arrive once a year, who collects them, SUMA, if you're in this region, because you use SUMA for other things that I'm not going to get into in this video, and that everything is correctly set up in your name and your address. And your gestor can check all of this very quickly, very easily, and make sure that there's nothing missed. And just to be clear, if you're renting property in Spain, you don't pay any of these taxes. Your landlord's responsible for IBI and the rubbish tax, not you. Section 5, and this applies to everybody. The steady drip of admin charges. It's amazing. Spanish people don't realise because they're used to it. But these were all unexpected costs to me when I moved to Spain. So it's a steady drip of small admin charges that come with everyday life here. Nothing dramatic. Usually €5, €10, maybe €20, but you see them more often than you'd expect in my experience. For example, if you're getting documents stamped, requesting official copies of something, getting certificates from the town hall, booking certain appointments, little office fees that appear when something needs to get processed. And yes, here's an example of my own experience. At the end of last year, whenever I was going for my residency appointment, which is at a police station, there's a lot of requirements for your residency, but one of them that really shocked me, I had to go to any bank before, I think it was 10 a.m. in the morning, within 3 days of the appointment, and pay a fee of around, I think it was €12, called the tasa, for the appointment in the police station. And tasa charges, they're common for many types of official paperwork, not just residency. And by the way, I've done a video on this to make matters worse. Whenever I went to the appointment, which was 100 kilometers from where I live, the officer who was doing the paperwork for me, I didn't notice this, made a tiny mistake. He put the wrong day in my date of birth, 22nd, it should have been the 23rd, I didn't notice. And when I did notice, it turned out I had to go through basically the whole process again, wait another 2 months, and I had to, even though they made the mistake, I had to go and pay the €12 again within 3 days of the appointment to pay for the appointment for the guy who made the mistake and put me through all this. It's just the way it is. You just have to accept things like that. It's the price you pay for cheap living in the sun. And you know, Spain isn't trying to catch you out. It's simply a more paperwork heavy system, and you do get used to it somewhat. And that brings me to something that can save you a lot of headache. Knowing who to use for what. By the way, I should have explained, I'm going off a dual carriageway here. The reason why I'm in my car, I've just left my friends who've been here for 3 weeks to the airport. They're going home. So I'm driving back from Alicante Airport to Villamartin. Where was I? Yes, who to use for what. So, number 6, lawyer v gestor. And I know I've been touching on that, but I want you to understand it fully. It's one of the biggest lessons I learned in Spain is the difference between the lawyer and the gestor, and why knowing who to use can save you money, time, and a lot of frustration. Now, if you're buying a property or you need a will done, you absolutely need a lawyer. That's their job. the legal checks, the purchase contract, and making sure everything that's really important is safe and correct. But once that's done, or if you're just renting and not buying, a lawyer is usually someone you don't need to go to. Not for everyday things, everyday tasks. And that's of course where your gestor comes in. And a gestor, again, as I mentioned earlier, deals with all the practical, everyday paperwork that's being thrown at you, and there is a lot of it. And the kind of things that aren't complicated legally, but still need to be done properly. The NIA, which you get when you arrive here, your TIA, which is your residency card, a pardon, and a pardon is something you get asked for quite a lot here. I think it's mainly a proof of residence, but also, yes, setting up your utilities, direct debits, helping you get a bank account, changing names and bills, understanding the letters from SUMA or town hall, driving license exchanges, car paperwork, health car registration and SIP card issue, local taxes and basic filings. They do them all for you. And honestly, looking back now, I wish I'd have really understood what a gestor was before I used my solicitor to do a lot of these things. You'll go to a gestor, they'll ask you for all the paperwork they need and whatever, and all the questions, and they'll help you deal with everything. They'll make appointments for you. And I imagine they would go to the appointments with you if you need them. Oh yes, and another one, almost forgot about this. And this is something I wouldn't have been used to. We didn't have to deal with in the UK or Ireland. I'm not sure about the rest of Europe. But both your property purchase and your will have to be signed off by a person called a notary. And a notary in Spain is basically the person who makes the documents legally binding or official. They witness them, stamp them, sign them, and register them. And to be honest, I can't remember the exact costs, but I think I get charged by the notary for the deeds or the contract from a home, from a small apartment, around €100, and for my will, around €70. And yes, that's not a massive amount, but it's another one of those things that I didn't really expect until it happened. Yeah, so Spain does have a lot of paperwork, and yes, the solicitor will make those arrangements for you. I think my solicitor went to both of those, to the notary with me, but I gesture for everything else. Right, so number 7. Why this matters for your budget, if that isn't already obvious. Most people who are moving anywhere but moving here tend to budget for the big things mainly. Your rent or mortgage, your groceries, your transport, your eating out. And Spain really is affordable in all those areas. But the things that can catch you out, especially in your first year, is everything I've just discussed with you. Especially the property purchase tax if you're buying a home. And the extra costs for me for using the wrong person for the wrong job. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but none of these things are designed to trick you or con you or whatever. They're just part of how the system works here. And once you know about them, once you budget for them, life here becomes exactly what most people come here for. To live a relaxed, affordable, simple and honest, hot lifestyle. Right, there you go. That's it for this one. And I hope this has given you a clearer picture of the kind of costs that can catch some new expats by surprise, or immigrants by surprise. But it's not to put you off Spain. Spain is wonderful. It's to help you properly avoid the surprises I ended up learning the hard way. Alright, now if you found, as usual, if you found this video useful, if you enjoyed it, hold on. Big corner to turn, loads of people around. Give the video a like. Subscribe if you haven't already. Subscribing's free. Once you subscribe, you'll be made aware of all my videos as they come out. Leave a comment in the comment section. Get involved. Tell people of your own experiences. Anything else that you can think of that they need to watch out for. If there's anything that you can think of or you're curious about that you would like me to cover in the future, just tell me in the comments. And if you're planning on moving to Spain, look at you. And keep an eye out for my next videos. I have plenty more coming that hopefully helps make the whole process that little bit simpler, less confusing. But for now, I'm going to leave it off there. So until next time, bye for now.